Hey everyone, Shane here with etrailer.com. Today I have a 2012 Volkswagen Touareg. I'm going to walk through how to install the ETBC7 kit. The ETBC7 kit is going to be designed for vehicles that want to tow a trailer with brakes on it, but don't have a factory tow package on their car. This is going to give you all the proper wiring to run inside the vehicle so you can add a brake controller. It's also going to give you your 7-pole plug at the back so it can match the 7-pole plug on the trailer to provide you with that brake signal to your trailer. It's also going to give you a 4-pole plug, so if you're pulling a trailer that does not have brakes and only has a 4-pole, it still allows you to use that. Now, something to keep in mind is if you're going to be adding this onto your vehicle, it is going to require you to have 4-pole wiring installed. So the wiring is going to plug in behind your taillights. 4-pole is going to live inside the vehicle. It'll have to be routed out, and then it'll connect to the back of this 7-pole plug to give this 4-pole plug the signal. This kit is going to come with everything needed to get it installed and wired directly to your brake controller, also to your battery. It's going to give you the bracket to mount your 7-pole and 4-pole too, so to come with it. It's also going to give you the circuit breakers. So the wires that we're going to run to the front of the vehicle have to be connected to circuit breakers. Circuit breakers, or the wires from the circuit breaker, either run to the battery or run inside the vehicle and connect to the brake controller. One thing to keep in mind with this vehicle, the brake controller is going to require a brake light signal. Typically, we would tap into the cold side of the brake light switch. On this vehicle, it is very difficult to do because the brake light switch is typically up above the inside the dash, or up above the brake pedal arm. On this vehicle, it's on the outside of the vehicle, right on the firewall, underneath a plastic panel, and it's underneath the brake booster, so it's very difficult to get to. If you're able to get to it, it's probably going to be hard just to get to the one wire that you need. So what you can do is we're going to tap into a brake light signal off the back. We can't do it off of these because these two are combined, which means your brake and turn signal are on one wire. So what we do is you run it off the third brake light in your hatch. The wiring is actually over here in this corner, so it's very easy to get to. You don't have to run it all the way up. Now that wire, you can either run it through the headliner, or you can run it down and up with your jacketed wire. Something to keep in mind is the grommet that you have to go through underneath the dash is kind of up in the corner, and where it comes out is right in between the brake booster and a panel. So it's only about this big. To get the two wires from the jacketed wire in there, they're very thick. What I suggest is running the two wires for the jacketed wire up underneath the vehicle, running them through the grommet, running the wire coming from here because it's inside the vehicle, run it up through the headliner and down to the front where you can connect it to your brake controller. Now we've gone over some of the features, let's walk through how to get it installed. To start your installation, if you don't have 4-pole wiring, you're going to have to install it first. You can find those here at eTrailer. They're going to install inside the vehicle, and the 4-pole is actually going to stay inside. So we are going to need to get this outside. If you have wiring, this is how we're going to do it. You're going to take off your threshold. Once you remove your floor covering, take off your threshold, you're just going to pull it up. You're going to remove this piece. It's two star bits, or a star bit. It's a T30. You're going to have one in the back, one in the front, and you're just going to pull this panel out. Right down on this corner, there's a grommet, a large grommet. Kind of see where that wiring is going down? That will give you enough room to run that 4-pole down there. And then we'll just slice that grommet in half, feed it around the wiring, and then we can reinstall that. Once you get your 4-pole plug pushed out through that hole or that grommet, you're going to need an extra pretty long piece of wire. The reason we need this is for this vehicle, the brake controller is going to need a brake light signal to activate the brakes on the trailer. However, on this vehicle, the brake light switch is on the outside of the firewall, underneath a panel that runs across the length of the hood, or your engine compartment, and then it's down underneath the brake booster. So in order to get all that stuff moved and to get down to one wire on that brake light switch, it's much easier to use the third brake light signal from here, which the wires run right here, and just run an extra wire up and attach that to your brake controller wire. This wire, it's a black with a red stripe or brown with a red stripe wire, is going to be our brake signal. Now, the reason we can't use these is because these lights are combined, which means when we press on the brake, the same lights function, this one and this outside one, function as a turn signal as well. Since they're combined, we cannot use that as a brake signal for our brake controller. The third brake light only works as a brake light signal. We're going to test this pin right here where that wire's going in. We're going to have somebody push on the brakes and off the brakes. We want to see that the light on it turn off and on. And then we're going to apply the brakes and turn on the blinker and make sure that this doesn't blink. Okay, so what we're looking for, keys in, it's on. We're going to press the brake pedal, and you can see our light comes on and turns off when we push the brake pedal and release the brake pedal. We turn on our blinker. We want to make sure that the light on there is not blinking, the light on our tester. Once you determine that that wire is only the brake light signal, that's the one coming from the third brake light in the center, we can tap into that and run that wire up to the front. Now, an easy way to get your wire underneath your headliner, over in the corners, there's usually a pretty big gap. I have an airline tube going from here straight up to that back driver's side door. You can use a wire hanger, anything that's got a little bit of rigidity that you can just pass it through there. From here, we're going to take, in our kit, you're going to get some quick connectors. We're going to take one, put it on our wire like that. We're going to take our extra wire, we're going to feed it right in that end, then we're going to crimp it right in the center. Make sure both wires are running center through there. Then we'll close that up. We'll route this wire right underneath this rubber trim, right up to our line that we have running up to that door. Once you get to here, the rest of the way up is going to be fairly easy. You're going to have a side curtain airbag that's mounted straight up about right here. So if we take our wire and we run it right on top of our headliner, it's going to potentially get in the way of that side curtain airbag if the airbag comes out. So what I did is I ran it right to the outside here and tuck it up along this edge. Went straight from here, straight across, and did the same thing there. Followed that seal all the way down this edge, just tuck it in back behind there, all the way down, and then went from here over. This panel right here pops up. You're just going to pull up on it, pull up on this one to separate the two. There's a screw right back behind this handle. You pull that out, this will fold out sideways a little bit to give you enough room. You can take your airline or whatever your pull wire was and run it back behind there to get your wire in. Once you get to the front door, we're going to do the same thing. You're going to have another side curtain airbag here. So tuck it up under the seal, and we're going to run this all the way down. Once you get down to here, we're going to pop this side panel off. It sits right there. Trim panel tool, stick it in the top or the side, pop it off, and it'll come out. Take this little piece. All we're going to do is pop it like that, and we can feed our wire right there, and it comes out right underneath the dash. From here, we need to determine where we're going to mount our brake controller. Since the inside of this vehicle is so compact, the best place that I found to put it, where you can actually see it and it's going to sit level the way it's supposed to, is right here. With the panel off, we can check back here to make sure that when we put our screws in to mount the bracket, we're not going to hit anything. Now our customer already had the Kurt Venture brake controller. If you're getting this, you're also going to need this extension. It's going to come with the bare wires on the ends. This is going to plug directly into the brake controller wire, and these 4 wires are going to connect, or 3 of them are going to connect to the 3 wires that we have inside the vehicle. The white one we ran in is going to connect to the blue. The larger black one that we ran through the firewall is going to connect to black. The smaller black one that we ran through the headliner is going to run to the red for a brake light signal, and our white one is going to be our ground, which when we cut the extra off of one of these wires, we can attach it here, and we can just ground it right over on the sidewall as long as it's on a metal surface. Now I went ahead and popped this panel back off because I decided what I'm going to do with this extra stuff. I'm going to take this in, I'm going to feed it up right back here. I'll take my 3 wires that I have running inside the vehicle, and we're going to route them through here as well. We'll make our connection out here, and I can take this extra wire and we'll zip tie it up here where it's out of the way. Next, we need to get our 4-pole up over our exhaust and over here. You can use an airline tube if you have any, wire hanger, anything like that. Feed it right through this end, and it's going to come out right over top of your heat shield because we don't want our wiring touching our muffler. We're going to take this, we'll feed it up like this. You just tape the 4-pole to it. You might have to, there's a nut right here holding your heat shield up. You might have to bend down this outer edge just a little bit to get the 4-pole through there. And then once you get it through, you can always bend that back up. And that will keep our wiring off our exhaust. To do this install, you're going to need a long bracket. It's a no-drill mounting bracket. It comes with a clamp. And that is because our cross tube for our hitch is up behind our bumper fascia. So we need this bracket to hang down low enough so we can get our 7-pole bracket on for our ETBC7. Right up above our receiver tube, or our cross tube, there's a piece of foam, a really thick piece of foam. So it's going to be hard to get this to sit flush against there and then get this around it. If you take a flathead screwdriver, something like this, you can actually reach up behind, take this, reach up the front, and you can push up on the foam, get your fingers up underneath of it, and it will leave a gap that you can take this and slide it up flat against the cross tube, and then get your clamp through this hole and then around the hitch. So you're going to reach up right behind the hitch, kind of wrap your fingers around the top of the cross tube, and then take your screwdriver or whatever it is you're using, reach up on the front side, and you're going to push up on it, and then kind of stick your fingers under there. We're going to take this guy, the short side, we're going to go up on the outside, or the back side of our cross tube, and we're going to put that up on top of the cross tube underneath that foam. Ideally what you want is you want it to sit straight up and down. Now it may be easier if you get your clamp, this end, put up over the top of your cross tube first, and then put your bracket underneath of it and then slide it on top of the cross tube. Then you're going to have this bracket that comes with your ETBC7 kit. This is meant to be mounted like this. However, you notice our bracket, the way it's facing, it's going to face like that. So you can mount it like this, but when you plug your trailer in, it's going to plug in this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this flat so that this is sitting like that. Your long bracket is going to come with bolts to mount this bracket to it. And we'll just come back and tighten those down. Now we're going to take our 7 and 4 pole plug that comes with our ETBC7 kit. We're going to feed it through like this. And then we'll mount our 7 pole to the bracket. It's going to come with hardware, long bolt. On the back side, we're going to put a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut. You'll have one of these hardware combinations for each corner of your 7 pole. And you're going to notice you have 2 4 pole plugs with your 7 pole. This one here is going to mount right on the side of that bracket. This one is going to get connected to the 4 pole plug from the vehicle, or from your wiring to your taillights. Now you can do this a couple different ways. You can take the two, just plug them together, zip tie them, wrap them up with tape, or you can cut your wires and then heat shrink them together. I am just going to do it just like this. Throw a zip tie on it. We're going to go through the wire here, up like this. And that will keep our 2 plugs from coming apart. You're going to have 4 wires hanging off your plug: black, blue, yellow, and white. Yellow wire is going to be the reverse wire. We're not going to be installing it, so I just taped it right to my 4 pole plug there. Black wire is going to be the power wire to your 7 pole. Blue wire is going to be your brake signal for your brake controller. White wire is going to be your ground. These are going to come with plastic butt connectors on them. Since these are going to be outside, I recommend changing them out for heat shrink butt connectors. You can find them here at eTrailer. White wire is going to have a ring terminal on it. The length of this wire, there's nowhere to really ground it right here, so the length of it is going to be too short. Cut that ring terminal off, add another butt connector, add an extra length of wire with a ring terminal on it. We're going to route it over, and we're actually going to ground it right up in here. You're going to have a roll of jacketed wire with your kit. It's going to look like this. You're going to take one end and you're going to feed it from here over the same way. Cut the coating, strip back each one of the wires. Black wire is going to go to black. White wire is going to go to blue. Now we can take our heat source and we can shrink our butt connectors if you're using them. Once we get the heat shrink butt connectors shrunk down, go ahead and run tape from your wire loom that's on it down over the end here. Make sure you leave your ground wire out, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take it all, we're going to tuck it up in here and pull it back over to this side. Route it the same way that we did our 4 pole. We're going to go ahead and take the extra from it and pull it over as well. We can take any extra of our 4 pole from inside the vehicle, pull it back up through that grommet, and seal that grommet. It'll keep anything from hanging down. To run our jacketed wire to the front of the vehicle, we need to make sure that we're running in such a way that we're staying away from anything hot or moving. So once I came out of the front side of the heat shield here, I ran straight around and over top of the axle where this body mount is. There's factory wiring that already has connectors to the frame rail. So what I did is I took the zip ties that come in the kit, a couple of them, and I ran that wire right along there and then zip tied it so it stays away from our spring. Once we got up here to the front, in front of our axle, I went behind the factory line, zip tied it to this factory line. You're going to have a couple of star bits that run along this inside edge of this plastic piece. You take those down, you can take this line all the way up to the front and just tuck it up there and then reinstall these. And then your line is up protected. I came all the way up here to the front. So once you get to here, we need to get it up. Take an airline tube, something like that, and feed it down. It's going to make it easier. Wire hanger. We have dual exhaust. Our exhaust is a little closer to the firewall. We have our steering arm as well that comes out and is close to this sidewall. So we can't exactly run our wire straight up from here straight up, because then it's going to hit the steering arm. So what I did is, once I got it around here, I basically went straight across. There's a line right up here. That hose that runs straight up, I ran it behind it and then went straight up. That way that hose is keeping it up against that sidewall, up against the heat shield, and away from the exhaust. Once we get our cable up into our engine compartment, we're going to have 3 circuit breakers in the kit. You need to determine, your brake controller is going to tell you, in the instructions, is going to tell you what circuit breaker to use. You're always going to use the 40 amp, that's for the power. There's going to be a 30 amp and a 20 amp, so you need to check the instructions again for your brake controller and determine which one you're going to be using. For the brake controller this customer had purchased prior, it requires a 30 amp. So we need to find a place to mount these. Since our wire is running up right here, and we're going to have to go inside the vehicle, right behind this piece of cardboard or foam, I'm going to cut a little square out here, and this is all metal. I'm going to mount both of them right here. You do have a box right here, and you have your fluid reservoir here. So you want to make sure wherever you're going to put it, your self-tapper is not going to go into it. So you might have to move over this way just a little bit with it. So we'll cut a little bit more off here. I'm going to mount my 30 amp here. I actually decided to move the 40 amp over to here instead of here because this area does get kind of close to that box, and these screws are going through a little bit farther than I thought they would. So this is actually above that reservoir, and this is in between the two. This one is. So the screws going through are not close to it. So now what we need to do is we're going to take our jacketed wire and we're going to strip the coating off of it and separate the 2 wires. Once we get our 2 wires separated, we're going to separate them back to where our circuit breakers are. We're going to take our black wire, we're going to cut it this size so that when we add a ring terminal, it's going to go to the copper post, the silver post on the 40 amp circuit breaker. We'll add a small ring terminal. We're going to take our other end, over the wire we just cut off, we're going to strip it back. Add on another small ring terminal. We're going to go to the copper post on our 40 amp. We're going to measure it, and it's going to go over to the positive side of our battery. Now, for this vehicle, this post right here is the positive side, or goes to the positive side of the battery. So we're actually just going to attach it right here. Large ring terminal. We're not going to make the connection yet, so we'll just leave that hang like that. We're going to take one end of our wire, we're going to have another large ring terminal. We're going to add it on there. We're going to measure it from the positive side of the battery like we did our other one to the copper post on our 30 amp circuit breaker. Small ring terminal. So from here, we have power from our battery to our circuit breaker, 40 amp circuit breaker, back to our 7-pole plug. We have power from our battery going to our 30 amp circuit breaker. We're going to take another piece of black wire. We're going to go from here inside the vehicle, and that's what's going to power our brake controller. Again, we're not going to make our connections to our battery just yet, so we'll just leave them there, and we'll get those last. Now we need to take our black and our white wire and get them inside through the firewall to the driver's side footwell. There's actually, if you take this rubber seal off and just pull up on it, lift this up, right back in this corner, you can't see it very well, but there's a grommet, and it's easier to access from the inside. If you access from the inside, you can take a long screwdriver, poke a couple holes in it, enough that you can get a line through there. Once you get your line through, then you can attach the black and white wire to the end of it and use it to pull the two wires in. The grommet on the inside is going to be on the firewall towards the left side. So you see my pull wire, if you follow that up to the firewall, you can see where that grommet is. Once you are underneath your dash, you'll be able to see exactly where it is. It may be kind of hard to see on the camera itself. Now to get your wires over to this area inside this box so we can close this flap, you can, if you really want to, drill a small hole here and just feed them straight in. You can also come around this outside edge, run them back behind this box here, and then we'll go in, which is how I did it. So now with our pull wire, we're going to attach our white wire because it's the longest. We're going to pull that in. Once we get our white wire in enough to where we can grab onto it, we'll take our black wire, which is shorter, and then we'll attach it onto the white wire and pull it in as well. Once you have all your wires connected, our last step is to make the connection to the positive side of our battery. Once you have a connection made, go ahead and test everything out and make sure it's working correctly. Now we're going to test out our wiring at our 7-pole plug. We're going to be using an alternate power source. This is going to simulate being hooked up to your trailer with brakes. Left turn, right turn, brakes, running lights, and then of course the override on our brake controller. Next, we're going to test the 12-volt power coming to the back, or to our 7-pole. It's going to be the top right one. We know we got 12-volt power, and we'll go through, we'll test our 4-pole plug to make sure it's working. Once we're done testing that, as long as it's working correctly, we can go ahead and put the interior back in place. Once you've tested everything out, you're ready to go. It's going to do it for a look at and installation on the ETB C7 on the 2012 Volkswagen Touareg.